More regulation for firearms in Canada is as a way to eliminate community and gang violence when all of the community level violence is being committed by those who are not licensed to possess or use them will not be effective. Canada has adequate laws for firearm ownership, and the gatekeepers of ensuring our laws remain intact and strong have done an amazing job keeping them this way. My organization is Communities for Zero Violence. So thank you for inviting me to speak in this forum. My name is Evelyn Fox. I'm the founder of Communities for Zero Violence, a nonprofit agency that provides peer-led supports to homicide survivors and victims of community violence as a way to interrupt the cycle. Communities for Zero Violence was formed 8 months after the homicide of my eldest son, Kiesingar Gunn, in 2016. Over the past 5.5 years, I've taught myself about the firearm laws and regulations, educated myself on the chief firearms officer's functioning, and taken the firearm safety course just for the knowledge, and was very impressed to hear the instructor's constant reminders of how to handle and store a firearm safely. Every instance of violence has an intervention point that has been overlooked or not been acted upon by either people closest to that person, service providers, or those in positions of power whose job it is to intervene. For instance, you can imagine my surprise when I learned that only 10% of personal references are contacted when someone initially applies for their, and none of the references contacted when renewing the license, especially app trainer emphasizing the fact that the references would be contacted before being approved for the license. How is this ensuring public safety? Why are references not being contacted? We live beside a country that has a patchwork system to regulate firearms that are illegally seeping through our borders in one form or another. CBSA is only required to inspect 1% of each shipping container that comes over our borders, 1 of every 100. CBSA has seized vehicles at the border with multiple firearms hidden in them. How many times have those individuals smuggling the firearms been successful before getting caught? How will this be addressed? What improvements to the borders will be implemented? More regulation for firearms in Canada is as a way to eliminate community and gang violence when all of the community level violence is being committed by those who are not licensed to possess or use them will not be effective. Canada has adequate laws for firearm ownership, and the gatekeepers of ensuring our laws remain intact and strong have done an amazing job keeping them this way. The talk of allowing the municipalities and provinces to ban firearms within their borders is an American-style regulation that we know does not work, and to even suggest it is irresponsible and not in the best interest of any Canadian. There has been discussion after discussion, report after report, with all the same recommendations for the past 14 years about addressing the social determinants of health and investing in communities across Canada. And still a gun ban and more regulation of firearms is a primary focus of investment. The significant polarization of opinions do not allow us to have an honest and meaningful discussion about the gun violence across about a firearm ban without speaking about banning poverty and all the underlying issues that stem from it. We have traumatized communities that are never able to heal due to the continued occurrences of violence and the lack of resources to provide them support. When my son Kiesingar was killed, my younger son was 12. He went from being a straight-A student with aspirations of being a human rights lawyer with the United Nations to failing all of his classes due to his inability to focus and his invasive thoughts. He started engaging in at-risk behavior and self-medicating. He started engaging in illegal activities that started to escalate into various serious crimes. And if I hadn't done everything I could to intervene, he was destined to end up being killed or killing someone else. This is what all levels of government should be focusing on. There should be proactive, not reactive approaches to eliminating the violence. The Roots of Youth Violence report that outlines the most pervasive risk factors of why youth engage in violent acts was issued in 2008. All levels of government are aware of the risk factors and recommendations set out in the report, and every party since, in majority, has cut to the areas of recommendation and are now surprised that we have escalating community and gang violence. Our communities are in crisis, and is long past due to do what is right by Canadians whose voices have been largely ignored, who deserve gainful opportunities to enrich their communities and their lives. Those of us who have had our loved ones murdered are real people who suffer with real trauma. We deserve to have the support of our elected officials to make our communities safe. We should feel safe enough to allow our children to go to school, play in playgrounds, attend social events and recreational facilities without the fear of them not returning due to the escalating violence that is terrorizing our cities. Community safety is a right my son had to go out and enjoy his time with his fiancée, a right to return home after enjoying his night, a right to exist free from violence wherever he chose to travel throughout the city, throughout our province and our country.
And I want to start by saying thank you for the excellent work that you're doing in our communities. Throughout this committee, the words that you have put forward have been echoed by law enforcement, that we need more investment in community-based approaches, and that we are woefully underfunding community-based approaches to divert at-risk youth from a life of crime, and to get people who are in a life of crime to divert away from a life of crime. What specific measures do you think this committee could recommend that would be most effective for the government to dedicate resources to reduce gun violence, reduce youth in gang activity? Thank you. I guess Ms. Fox, I'll go for you first.
Thank you. So in 2008, as I said, the Roots of Youth Violence report was released after the 2005 Year of the Gun issue we had in the city of Toronto. And outlined in that report is various recommendations that were put out from the provincial government to tackle the youth engage in the violence. So poverty is one of the number one issues, and the rest kind of filtered down in terms of systemic racism. You have the education system, you have the lack of housing. Like anybody who's been to Toronto or Vancouver knows that the cost of living in our cities is unbelievable. It's not, you can't survive in this city unless you're an upper income person. So it's not surprising that we have the level of violence that we have when we are continuing to see the financial gaps grow, and people are just trying to survive. The trauma that is left in these communities, some people that I support have lost more than one family member and friend, like multiple people. They never have a chance to even attempt to heal before another one is taken. So we don't have hardly any services that cater to community violence, which is one of the reasons why I started my organization, because trying to find myself and my children continuous supports was horrible. It was absolutely horrible trying to navigate. And I work in social services. So it's very difficult to find the resources that are culturally specific and that people have the ability to connect with to deal with the trauma that they've been exposed to. You have children who are growing up through all of this trauma, and it's becoming somewhat normal to them, to the point where what would we expect them to do living in this environment?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Maybe I will go to Mr. Miller, but my final quick question to Ms. Fox. I mean, clearly there's a potential plan by this government to spend up to $1 billion, perhaps more, to buy back firearms, which we know will be predominantly bought back from legal owners, and which will primarily be long guns, not handguns. Do you think this would have any impact on the youth you're talking about and the people involved in a life of crime? Is this going to have any impact on them? And do you think that $1 billion could be better spent on the programs that you're saying are needed?
Short answer would be no, it would not have any effect at all. Long answer would be that it absolutely infuriates me that the government that is supposed to be acting on our behalf is willing to dump more than $1 billion into a buyback from legal owners, and 250 million that's been promised over the past 6 years that still hasn't been filtered down to the provinces and the municipalities, and $250 million is a drop in the bucket to what the communities across Canada require to do the real work.
And my condolences, Ms. Fox, for your loss. Thank you very much for your commitment. You were saying in your opening remarks that you've educated yourself on the question. You're trying to change things, so that is really wonderful. And you did say something. You said that the federal government is working where the municipalities are responsible with respect to prohibiting arms, and I don't think that's a good idea either. But I think maybe that there is a lack of political courage by the firearms lobby, and I think that in my riding, there are 56 municipalities. So imagine if from one municipality to another the rules were different, and if it's provincial, well, some are more inclined to legislate and some don't want to prohibit firearms. So I'd like to know what you think the solution is. So do you think it's the federal government that is responsible?
Thank you. Yes. If there was to be a ban implemented, it would most definitely have to be a federal ban. Copping out to provinces and municipalities isn't going to do anything. We have people who travel back and forth. We have people who are on Canada-wide warrants who travel from province to province to province without detection. The municipalities and provinces don't have border control. There's no way to regulate that. And we see how it works in the States. It doesn't work. It's not right to try to make the municipalities and provinces responsible for that. That is a federal issue that needs to be governed by the federal government.
Merci pour la réponse. Et je comprends que...
Thank you for your answer. And you are committed to work against guns, but I'm wondering, when you know about there's suicides and there's mass murders and there is the buyback program, but do you think it's legitimate that the federal government should also be being involved with that, and that they should be asking people who own firearms, and maybe I think it's since 2020, but if people have a firearm that is not on the list, but it may be similar to a firearm that is on the list, what do you think the federal government should do in that instance?
I think that like I said previously, every act of violence, whether it's suicide, whether it's a mass shooting, whatever the case may be, there is always an intervention point. And that person has been failed by whomever, whether it's the person closest to them, a service provider, or even those who, like I said, who it's their job to ensure that person's safety, has failed in intervening. So I don't think that a gun ban against legal owners is the right solution. We also have, as I said, only 10% of the references for the PAL license to own a firearm, only 10% of the references are checked. Why is that? If we have an issue with domestic violence and women are concerned for their safety, then if their partner has a firearm, why would all the references not be checked? Why would they not be checked to get the license and to renew the license? If the partner signs the application, then that's deemed as their consent and they're not even contacted to get feedback. So I'm surprised actually that that it is that way, considering we're so honed in on firearm regulation? Why is it that those references are not 100% checked? Because that's what I was informed in the safety course, is that those references would all be checked to ensure that I was a safe enough person to attain that license.
Je suis d'accord avec vous dans la loi.
I agree with you. In C-21, it's not clear with respect to the verification process. And if we follow all of the elements that would allow somebody to get a firearm. On another subject, you said that we should have more of a community approach, and with respect to massive financing of the police or other agencies. So what type of prevention do you think it would be good?
I think that not so much funding into the police. The police are a reactive response. They are not a proactive response. I think that programs like Marcel Wilson's with the 1x1 movement, who does gang intervention, I think that trauma support is a major factor, because once you have experienced the homicide of a loved one, you literally lose your mind. It is the most horrible experience I have ever had to experience in my life, and I will never be the same person that I once was. I had thoughts of suicide, and my son going out of control was to get involved, because I couldn't function. People have to leave their jobs because they can't function anymore. People see their other children spiraling out of control, and they don't have what it takes to intervene. So, I mean, the cycle of violence it's very real and very serious. We need to address the root causes. That is what needs to be done. And we've had person after person in this forum speak about it, and for 14 years have had the same community leaders speaking about the same thing. And still, it's the voices of the people in anomaly situations that are not affected by the everyday violence that are overheard over the people who live this day to day. That it's extremely frustrating, but that's what needs to happen. The social determinants of health and the root causes, that is where it lies. And if we had done it 14 years ago, we would not be in this place today.